Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today, September 27th, 2023, I am joined by Chris Court, executive producer at JOAN Creative. Chris's LinkedIn profile says it best. As a producer, she is not afraid of challenging situations. Over the years, she has learned to handle unexpected schedules, shifting deadlines, surprise requests, and general catastrophes in stride. She has managed creative briefs from a boat in the middle of a Wisconsin lake, taken client feedback while showering a car with a fire hose, and located missing caterers from the middle of a cow pasture. For Christina, the best project is one that challenges, excites, and gives her the opportunity to create great work and amazing images with talented people. When she isn't working with her creative team to find the perfect visual solutions, you'll find her hoarding plants or running with her dog. Or running with her dog to find more plants to hoard. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good. I suddenly got very nervous.
Oh my God.
After I heard that, I was like, well, that's a cucumber.
Well, you and I had a great banter before about crickets, babies, loud noises. So I think we did great together. So I have a feeling.
I agree.
Well, I'm really, really appreciative to have you on the show today. I've been wanting to have you for a guest for some time. So I appreciate your patience in all of my hounding you with invitations. So thank you for being here today.
I'm excited. I'm in good company.
Okay, good.
Grateful to be a guest.
Excellent. I would love to hear a little bit about your path to art production and maybe how you ended up at JOAN. I think it kind of helps inform your background and insights and all of your experiences that you bring to the table in your current job.
Yeah. I'm the first person in my immediate family to go to college. My father was in the military. My mom grew up in Korea and didn't go to college. And so I kind of didn't know where one went post-college, how one found a career that was outside of the doctor lawyer. Yeah. That my mom had very, very doggedly been pursuing for me. I always loved the creative field, but I'm not necessarily a creator, if that makes sense. I'm a person who enjoys creativity and being creative and evaluating creative, but I'm not necessarily the person who is going to make that creative. A really great way I have of like framing that skill set of mine is I can render an image accurately if you ask me to draw it. But if you told me to go make some art, I would be like, oh crap. That's not my love language. But I really didn't know how to flex that muscle. And so in college, I was a comm studies major. I went to school in North Carolina, and I fell into like the nonprofit track. I was working in community building and working in underserved communities, and I really just sucked at it. I was really bad. I didn't know how to be green at something and ask. I was really afraid of failure. And so I set myself in a position where I just didn't know how to ask for help in the right ways. And I was in a position that definitely would have been better served with somebody with more experience than me. And I just wound up failing really, really abysmally, like quite catastrophically at what I tried to do. And which I think it's important for everybody to fail really, really.
I agree.
At least once in their life. Right. And that was the last time I ever failed.
Yeah.
So, I quit / was fired, however we want to look at that. And, I worked this really, really tough job at this company that really was soul sucking, and just the culture was really tough, and it was an ugly time. It was 2008. And that was more in the project management realm, but I got to start to work with people like creatives who did design and did different and photo shoots and different things. And it really just got my antennas up. And when I left that job, that one I did quit. When I left that job, I just needed to figure out a way into that industry. I didn't know what that industry looked like. I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that I wanted to be a part of it. But I just started knocking on doors, and I asked people to take some time and let me ask them questions. So I had this idea. I wanted to do PR, and I definitely do not want to do PR. I learned that very quickly, but through a lot of conversations and just begging for mentors, I found this gentleman who was willing to take a chance on me. He had this little boutique agency, and I started doing some strategy, some account work, some project management work, some production work. And in that office space, there was a production company. And they let me be a production assistant on a job. And it was my job to write down the item numbers of everything that was in each photograph. So this vase, 100789, this cup, 100, so on and so forth. In the middle of summer, outdoors in Charlotte, North Carolina, it was awful, but also amazing. And from there, I was just hooked. So I just loved it. And I cobbled together this really weird freelance career for roughly 5 years. I worked with finished illustration. I worked in storyboards. I worked with artists. I worked with agencies. I worked in production. I basically would do it. I raised my hand for essentially anything that was possible. If somebody was like, well, I don't know how to do this, I was like, oh, I'll figure it out. I'll do it. And it just so happened that the trajectory of my career changed when I met a man named John Rosato, who was the senior art producer at Mullen Lowe in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And man, I'm forever grateful for. And he really became a mentor for me. He was the art producer on a shoot. I was the line producer. And I'd never really encountered an art producer. A lot of my work previous to that had been direct to client. So I'd worked directly with like heads of marketing or marketing department VPs and things like that. And it was mostly catalog work. That was a slightly different beast for me. And I was like, what do you do there? What's that you're doing over there in that corner? And he was gracious enough to meet me for coffee and talk to me about what he did and give me advice on how I could potentially break into it. And I just tried to stay on his radar. And sometime later, it so happened that he had an opening on his team and I had the opportunity to work for him. And I was with Mullen Lowe for a nice little beat. And then when it felt like that time, that journey had run its course, I got a chance to work for another wonderful human, Elizabeth Lucas, out of Ogilvy. And I worked with her for quite a few years. And then it just so happened that a friend of mine had moved to JOAN, and the production department at Ogilvy was going through a lot of changes. You know, it was the pandemic. A lot of the holding companies were all kind of losing their mind at the same time. And it just didn't feel like the right place for me to be anymore. I really loved my EP. I really loved the team I was working with, but it felt like it was time to stretch and do something different. And this opportunity at JOAN came about, and I met my head of production and we hit it off right away, and I just couldn't say no. So I've been with them for about 1.5 years now. Yeah. So that's my journey. Wow. Twisty and turny and unintentional, but here I am. All the best producers got there in a really weird way, right?
Absolutely. And being that I think you're episode 99, I can tell you with confidence, everybody has had very interesting circuitous routes to get to where they are. Why don't you share a little bit with us about your role as executive producer at JOAN? What is it that you do on a day-to-day basis?
It's funny because this is, my production career is not as long as a lot of executive producers. And part of that is that being at JOAN has afforded me an opportunity to be promoted ahead of where I would be if I had stayed at a holding company. I've talked to a few of my mentors about how that feels and the imposter syndrome that comes along with feeling like maybe you took a step before the industry wanted you to take a step. And so I would say that my role as executive producer is threefold, right? First and foremost, I am a producer. So it is my job to produce things when they come my way and do all the things that entails, right? And at a small agency like JOAN, we are very integrated. So we're not divided up in traditional art production roles and broadcast production roles and content roles, but we all touch all the things. And so there's a lot of places where we stretch. Some of the producers come from more broadcast backgrounds, so they have to stretch when it comes to photography. Some people are very integrated and it feels a little bit more where they're at home. I'm in a fairly integrated space. I have been for quite a bit, but there's some things on broadcast that, since I didn't originally come up in that space, that I may not have encountered. So, first and foremost, I'm a producer. I'm a maker of things, a figure outer of stuff. And then the second leg of what I would say I do is I'm an advocate for the goals of our department. So within the agency, I need to think about, what are the broader goals of the agency? What are the broader goals of my department within that agency? And how can we support the execution of that and the realization of those goals? And I think I think that we're all in advertising for a reason. It's not fine art. It's a creative with a purpose, right? It's strategic. It's thoughtful. It's quippy. It's tight. I just had a friend who made a documentary and she's like, oh, 15 minutes is so long because the ad background, you know, and we're used to telling stories in 1 minute bites or less, right? How quickly can you tell the story? When it comes to still work, you have to tell that entire story in one image, you know? And I think finding a way for the production team, for myself and for my team to support the vision of the creatives, the strategy, all the hard work that goes into concepting and selling through an idea and bringing it to life, you know, it's important that we find a way for us to work as a holistic unit. And I take that part of my job. That's probably my favorite part of the entire job. And then the third part of my job, and the part that I'm newest to, is the mentorship of my team. And so when I reflect on who my favorite executive producers are and my favorite leaders that I've had an opportunity to work for, and I've been very fortunate in my career to work for some really spectacular people, they have given me space while keeping an eye on me. You know, you and I both have children. It's very much like letting your toddler get onto the playground before you're maybe ready to let them do that, but not running over there and stopping them from making a mistake. And so, you know, they gave me space to fail a little bit, not colossally, but to fail a little bit and to learn and pivot. They've challenged me and pushed me when they thought maybe I wasn't considering something. And they've given me encouragement. And so we're a small team, but when I think about what I owe my team and what I would like to see for myself as an EP moving forward, it's how can I cultivate a better role of mentorship? And that's not to say to be condescending. I don't want to assume people don't know what they're doing. And I think sometimes the perception can be micromanaging. And so that's the balance I'm learning to strike right now. How can I support my team while giving them space? How can I be like those EPs that I so admired in the past and who gave me so much success and freedom while still, you know, instilling rigor and discipline and all the things that we expect out of each other as colleagues and teammates.
I think that's great. I had a conversation with another head of a department about just that a few weeks ago and how important it is, you know, as her being kind of at the top there at that department, to not only put the systems in place for her teams to succeed, but to also be there to help them learn and grow. And so while she might not be part of the day-to-day of reviewing artists or reviewing estimates or, you know, being present in client meetings, she needs to set her team up for success in all of those situations. And it was really interesting just to kind of hear her talk about that and how important it is for her to, you know, set her team up for success.
I haven't been an EP the entire time I've been at JOAN, but since I was moved into that role, if I was to try to look at what success in 2 or 3 years is going to look like for me in this position, it would be that the people below me feel like they were set up for success, feel like they had the opportunity to ask questions when they needed to, felt like they had the opportunity to try things out or to stretch or do whatever. Had a chance to ride whatever wave this crazy industry is going through right now. You know, like advertising is changing a lot and how we approach it and how we, as producers, bring things to life is changing a lot. And so helping us all navigate that is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the projects that you work on. I'm curious, do the projects that come across your desk tend to be hybrid projects that include both stills and motion? Are they mostly motion? Are they mostly stills? Are they mostly CGI or animation? Or is it just such a variety of work that you're being required to produce at JOAN?
It's funny because I was reflecting on this with a colleague of mine, and I've been going through a season of film lately. I've had the opportunity to work on some really amazing films. And as I mentioned, first and foremost, stills was where I started. It's my one true love. It's my original baby. I also think photo shoots are more fun, and you can play music on set. And I was just saying, I've done a lot of great film the past year. I've had an opportunity to work on some really spectacular projects. But it's been a long time since I've had a chance to do a stills project. So the short answer to that is at the moment, it's been a lot of film, but I don't necessarily think that it will continue to be that way. I think the projects that the agency we're just currently working on at that time needed that bit of creative. So I'm excited to see how that's going to change and shift in the next year. Historically, I've been lucky to be very integrated. At the very beginning of my career, it was stills and retouching and, photography and illustration. And then it moved into animation and then content projects and video and then TV commercials. And then I haven't done as many hybrid shoots. I know that's the way of the industry. A lot of teams are moving to video commercials and stills, but I just haven't had stills be as big a part of my larger brand video productions.
Mm-hmm. And on those video productions, are people ever like photographers ever piggybacking? So you're getting some stills, or is it just truly purely motion work that you're doing?
I'm a really weird producer in that sense. I haven't had a lot of piggyback shoots. I know it's very, very common in the industry. I'm one of those weird unicorns that just hasn't had them. We've had shoots. Most of my still shoots have been very specifically for a still asset. And so we have given more attention or care to the creation of those. If we're piggybacking talent or locations are happening on completely different days. So they really are just two projects running in parallel. Yeah. But it's been a long time since I've touched anything where you literally have a photographer like pulling talent onto a set, grabbing some quick things, which is something that I think a lot of my colleagues have seen a lot more of lately. So I've been fortunate. Yeah, I've been fortunate in being able to keep both. I think the risk you have when that happens is sometimes one bit of creative can become second banana to another bit of creative. And it's nice when you can keep those things as separate as possible so that each has their space to breathe,
And you never know when something is going to come across your desk, right? It's just kind of nature of the beast right now that you're working on all film projects, but at any moment, someone could hit send on an email where you're going to be working on some sort of photography project or some sort of CGI project
And that really goes, I think, to the heart of the industry. I also wonder, and this is, a broader conversation we've all had in one way or another, is like, what is the future of film in this industry anyway? What is the future of still work in this industry when the media landscape is not as conducive to big print pieces or to 30-second commercials? What does the new integrated producer do on a day-to-day basis? What does that project look like in 5 years? I think it's a really interesting prospect what our day-to-day is going to look like in a few years. And I don't think it's going to look anything like it currently does. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in how quickly the industry is going to change, but I just think it's going to be really exciting and really different.
I don't think you're putting too much stock in it at all. And, I'd be really interested in knowing what your opinion is on that. I think you just brought up what the entire industry is talking about. And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of curiosity. There's a lot of fascination, but there's not a lot of crystal ball confidence, right? Nobody really knows what's coming. So if you don't mind me asking, I'm kind of curious what your prediction could be.
Well, let me go on record as saying, absolutely not. I will never do that. I don't 100% know the answer. I think AI is doing some really interesting things right now. I know there's a lot of people who are concerned about AI maybe taking the place of creatives. I don't necessarily think of it that way. I think it's going to become a tool for creatives. And I think I'm really excited to see what photographers and CGI and animation and videographers do with the technology available to them. I've seen some photographers just playing with it already and just doing some really interesting things with their own work, challenging their own perceptions of what their work looks like. What I don't really have a finger on is what the next mode of consumption is going to be. I was talking with a friend of mine about how much I loathe an influencer campaign. I know I've said it. It's out there in the universe. People can take it or leave.
I think there's a lot of people out there listening right now who are either have big smiles on their faces or they're clapping. So,
or they're rolling their eyes, or they're trying to Google my address so they can egg my apartment. Who knows? But I just feel like, what I don't, and it's not the influencers themselves. What I don't love about an influencer campaign is it feels a bit disingenuous to me, because you have this human who's talking to you as if they're your friend, your colleague, your mom, your dad, whatever. They're trying to have an approachable, affable relationship with you on some social platform of some sort. But they're hawking something to you. And for some odd reason, that feels more disingenuous to me than a straight up television commercial or a straight up print ad. And I also think it eliminates the best part of this business, which is the opportunity to be creative and to surprise and delight people. I think some of my favorite advertising has had an element, whether it's emotional or humorous or whatever, it's had an element of surprise and delight. And it's been something that I've looked at and gone, wow, that's really funny. That's really beautiful. Or that's really something. And then I go and buy that thing because advertising works. We all know it. We all know.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, I think about my own daughter. How is she going to consume media in 20 years? I can't even begin to imagine what it looks like. It doesn't feel like the metaverse is ever going to be that place, right? It doesn't feel like augmented reality or augmented like digital spaces, like when you get an ad on Waze or something like that. That also doesn't feel like it's going to be the place. Part of me wonders, do we go back to a place where print becomes something we're really engaged with? I feel like I've seen a lot of young people gravitate towards magazines and fall in love with those wild postings around the city and all sorts of things that I feel like everybody was like, that's dead 10 years ago. So maybe there's going to be a loving embrace of that medium again, but I don't really know. And I would kill for somebody to tell me what that answer is, because I would love to be on the forefront of it. I think one place that we are going to see people engaging more in is experiential, because it's so hard to cut through the noise of television and cut through the noise of print. I just feel like actually being where people are is going to be something that people do more of. But I say that with very little confidence.
I think you should say it with confidence, because I think so much, we did a podcast a couple months ago about different trends with a woman named Liz Aviles from Upshot Marketing. And she was a trend forecaster, and she talked about that. And the idea of experiences, given where we are outside of the pandemic, is really important, and how people are really kind of striving for that. So I think brands showing up in places where people can experience things are important. So I think you should be able to say that with confidence.
And then I will. I take back my lack of confidence, and I insert a fully confident opinion regarding experiential. I also think that it's a medium that lends itself to that social culture really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you see an influencer go do something, or when you see somebody go experience something, the challenge is it's a very limiting thing, right? Having grown up in a small town, none of that stuff would have been accessible to me. I didn't grow up in New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles or any place where it felt like that would have come across my table. But then again, like I just said, that's something I may have seen somebody I followed encounter, or seen somebody I engage with encounter. So I don't know.
Well, and I think, this idea of a crystal ball and what does our industry look like over the next couple of years? I don't think it's possible at this exact time, because I think everybody is having the same conversation, from the brand to the holding company, to the individual agencies, to the individual people, to the vendors, to the photographers, to the art. Like, everyone is trying to figure it out. And I don't know that there's an answer. I think it's going to take a lot of action, like trial and error on everyone's part, to figure out what sells, where are they showing up, where do I need to be, how do I have to evolve? And I think collectively as an industry, we're going to figure out who our next best person is, right? Like what is our next best foot forward? And I think that's just going to take a little bit of time. But in order to do it, I think people have to show up. I was talking to a group of young photographers, BIPOC photographers yesterday who were looking for reps, and they wanted to know, how do you go about doing that? And there were 3-4 reps on the call, and everybody was like telling them, like peppering them with like what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And I just spoke up and I was like, all of these are amazing points and right on and based on years and years of experience. But remember, like, you are incredibly talented. If you're fortunate enough to find yourself a rep, you are incredibly talented and you're young and you're representing a generation that we are not a part of. So you need to really show up and participate in what's happening in the world. And I think you're going to help move it forward. So just remember that, we're all moving the industry a bit forward and have a role and a responsibility to do so. And maybe it'll weed out some people who don't want to, help, and they've kind of did their time and they're ready to move on.
Yeah. When you break it down, we're in a very crazy industry. I always joke that my mom still doesn't understand what I do. And
I don't think anybody's mom does.
For a good period of time,
we put weird things.
Yeah. She would suggest that I apply to the post office because I could get a pension. It's such a weird, crazy, odd industry that we are in. It's such a very specific culture and a very specific thing. It's hard to describe to people who are not in it. It's also in a very transformational period. It's, if I had $1 for every time somebody had told me I missed the heydays of advertising, I would be a wealthy, wealthy woman at this point in time in my career. It's not what it was 20, 30 years ago. It's not even what it was 5 years ago. It's changed so much in the last decade. But I think we're going to go into a period where we settle a little bit. And maybe that's just me. I think that, and the reason I think this is me projecting a lot of things right now, is I was reading something about the rapid shift in technology over the course of the millennials' lifespan, right? As I'm an elder millennial, I'm at the back end of that curve. We have experienced a great, great, great revolution in the way that media has consumed technology. The way we interact with the world has shifted colossally, monumentally, right? At a really pivotal time in our life. And what we've seen is that slowed down a little bit. Technology is evolving, but largely cell phones haven't changed much in a decade, They haven't changed much since the first one. They've changed a little bit, but they haven't changed much. The prediction of all print books going away and the Kindle's going to replace every print book and bookstores are all going to close down, blah, blah, like that didn't really happen. And we don't see anything that's accelerating us towards that. So I feel like, social media has been around now for a good clip. I mean, places like Facebook and Google and all those places, they're not the little upstarts anymore. Even TikTok's not really a little upstart anymore. These are all really ingrained parts of our everyday culture and our everyday lives. So I feel like what we see now is the industry struggling to best optimize that and to figure out how to make the most of the platforms that are available to us. I don't see something like a new Twitter coming around and changing the way we consume media altogether. I think it's going to be an evolution of the existing platforms. I think it's going to be an evolution of the existing mediums. And I think we're going to see a moment of settling. Now that I've said that, Crazy is going to launch in the next year. But I do think, aside from implanting something directly into our eyeballs, what else is going to change, right? Yeah, I'm just excited to see what creatives come up with, because I really do think to your point about the younger generation really leaning into that and being the driving force of that, is it's not going to come from the old industry dogs. It's not going to come from the people who've been working in this business for years. It's going to come from people who are consuming this media fresh, who are young, who are excited, who are hungry. And I'm really, really, really stoked to see what they bring to the table, what ideas they have, what new paths they generate. And I just hope that I get to touch a little bit of that before.
Well, think about it. We're an industry, you're not going to be washed up. We're an industry of creatives, producers, and strategists. So what better combination of people? And we the industry attracts very young people in each one of those roles. So what better group or collection of talent to push an industry forward. I will bet on us every time.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I did not intend to talk about that part of our industry today, but I'm so glad that we did. And I think it may be a good segue to getting us back on track to our original questions, is this idea of finding talent. We're talking about this next generation of talent coming along. I'm really curious. I know you work a lot on film stuff, but I'm sure, photographers and other types of vendors are reaching out to you all the time in the hopes that you have a project that's right for them. Can you tell us a little bit about how you stay connected to different types of talent and how do you find them?
I might be inviting a lot of emails after this. But I endeavor to accept most invitations that I get, especially from reps, because I think, candidly, reps have been the lifeblood of my career. It's not feasible for a producer to stay on top of every single bit of creative that every creator out there is doing. Wow. And so reps have really been a way to shorthand that for me. I need this. I need that. Do you have any thoughts? Do you have any ideas? And so I think from the production end of this industry, we are made and broken on the quality and the tensile strength of our relationships with the people who support us. And a very large part of that support is our reps. And so if a rep says to me, I've got somebody new and exciting, or I'd love to meet with you and grab coffee, I do, schedule permitting, try really, really hard to meet with them. And I try really hard to read the newsletters and the information that is sent to me, because I know that a colleague out there in the industry has lovingly curated this bit of information to make it easy for me to digest, to make it easy for me to see some spectacular bits of creative. And the least I can do is give it a fraction of my attention. So I do endeavor to do as many meetings as I can just to stay fresh with people. And
thank you. Speaking for all the reps out there, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think having been on the other side of it when I was doing my freelance career with an illustration is it's really disheartening when you feel like you're not being heard or you're not being acknowledged. And so I've tried really hard to think of that even when I engage with reps in the bidding process. I try really hard to be very transparent, to inform them of things, to keep them super up to date, and to tell them when something doesn't go wrong and why it doesn't go right and why it didn't go right. This is why this didn't go to you. This is what the creatives felt, because nothing is going to be served if I was like, okay, better next time, if I don't give good, meaningful feedback. So I endeavor just to have a good relationship with my reps. And when I come across a talented photographer or director or whomever that really excites me or catches my eye, I endeavor to just stay on their radar, because again, if you have a direct relationship to an artist and you both can get excited about a project together, what rare kismet is that? What a beautiful moment of just two things coming together, and like in an industry where it's really hard for those two things to come together in such a like serendipitous way. For you to just find the right photographer on your own is wow. Like, oh, I know the perfect dude. We've worked together, like so many times it's like, I have some thoughts, you have some thoughts. Let's write down a bunch of names. Let's think about what works together. Let's put some style boards together. It's a much more laborious process, right?
Yeah.
Like it's rare that I know a dude, right? In a more practical, tactical sense, the way that we find talent is we look at our creatives and we ask them, help me understand what story you're trying to tell visually or musically or whatever. And, when it comes to photographers, I really do think it's a tougher job than directors. I think finding a great photographer is a much more difficult process because you have so many fewer opportunities to get it right. Yeah. If your director is, maybe you can make it up in editing and with the proper this or proper that. Maybe if your editor's meh, you can make sure that you're really tight on your story or your script to begin with and all that stuff. But if your photographer isn't it, and your photographer isn't able to tell you the story right off the bat, then you're really screwed.
Is that saying a picture's worth 1,000 words?
It truly, right? truly is.
So one picture to get it right.
And exactly. So we really press our creatives to try to be specific. One, because we don't want to waste our time. We don't want to waste our reps' time. We don't want to waste anybody's time. We don't want them to get frustrated before we've even begun. So it's important that our creatives come to the table with a really strong point of view. And very rarely do they not have a strong point of view. But sometimes it requires you to coax that out of them. They don't always know how to articulate what it is they're looking for. And so they might send you 4 or 5 inspiration people who are very different. And you have to understand and you have to press them and you have to distill from them why they're gravitating towards this person or that person. So then you can go again to your colleagues in the community and say, hey, I'm looking for this very specific thing. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we're trying to capture. This is what we're hoping to achieve. And then, yeah, it's really just finding that right needle in the haystack that's going to check all the boxes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I want to go back to the idea of the relationship, because the relationship is so important on our side as well. Not just do I want to have a relationship with you so that you'll think of my artist, like that's the most obvious, but I also want to have a relationship with you because you're going to come to me and you're going to ask me for a favor, likely, or you're going to ask me to turn something around quickly. You're going to ask me to turn something around on a small budget. You're going to ask me to be a resource for you for something. And if I have a relationship with you already, I'm going to show up for you 100%. Not that I wouldn't help you out, but otherwise, because that's my job and I'm eager to please and do that in my job. But having this mutual respect and understanding of each other makes it really easy for me to drop everything and help you or push you in the right direction. So it is very worthwhile to put the time into that relationship, I think.
I truly could not agree more. There's that old adage that the most successful people surround themselves with people smarter than themselves. Never be the smartest person in a room, right? Always make
Never.
sure.
Yeah.
And there's a reason reps are what they are. They are the experts on the pool of talent in which they represent. Do I need a really strong tabletop photographer? I don't have a Rolodex of tabletop photographers at my fingertips. Do I need somebody who's really good at a particular type of lifestyle or a particular type of this or a particular type of that? It's funny because Andy Anderson is a really great example of a moment of kismet where I needed something really, really, really specific.
Yeah.
And it was actually the workbook team who pointed me to Andy. And I was knocking my head against a wall trying to find a veteran who was also a commercial photographer who had good taste and could shoot really powerful portraits. And the way that I came to him and was like, hey guys, I've asked around and I can't find this anywhere. Can you help me? And they did. And it's the perfect example of those relationships really showing up for you. If you show up for them, then they'll show up for you. And like you said, if we have a relationship, not only will you show up for me, but I'll feel comfortable asking you really honest questions or being really honest with you about the limitations of a project. Like, hey, this budget's really terrible. This might not be right for your roster. Do you have somebody that you're interested in, but you're not quite ready to, like those kinds of conversations are where a lot of the magic happens.
Well, and think about too, that relationship. Not only did you have a relationship with the workbook, right? You reached out, you asked them, they shared Andy with you, but Andy has a relationship with the workbook and so do I. So we're fostering that so that when it comes time to share with you, they're not only just thinking of Andy because he checked all the boxes you needed in that instance, but they have a strong relationship and they're there to kind of help him foster that. So they were able to talk about him in a way instead of just like, here, look at this link. They're able to tell you stuff about him that they knew from putting in time to get to know him. And I really believe that in our industry, there are it's not that I believe this. Everybody knows this. The competition is so insanely fierce. There are so many talented, amazing photographers out there and directors. And even if let's use lifestyle photography as an example, the spectrum of lifestyle photographers alone is enormous, right? So you have so many to choose from. How are you going to narrow it down? It's not like the old days where you have a file folder full of lifestyle promos and you're looking through it and, oh, there it is. And yes, you might have bookmarks your site, or you might have a Google Doc that you have links that are organized by category, all of that stuff. You might go to Instagram. Like, you have lots of tools at your disposal, but you still have not millions, but lots and lots and lots of choices. And it's overwhelming. So,
well, and on top of that, timelines aren't what they used to be, right?
And timelines. You have to do it quickly.
Exactly. Nothing moves at the speed it did 20, 30 years ago. Everybody is already late. Everybody enters every project already late, already behind the 8 ball. And so you really do. And maybe I doubt I'm alone, but maybe I'm unique in just thinking that if it wasn't for my reps, I don't know how I would do my job the day to day. It doesn't mean that every single person I engage with, I first source that way. No. But I would say a large majority of my most successful finds have come from relationships with reps, especially if I'm looking for something unexpected. If I'm looking for something unique, if I'm looking for something that is a little off the beaten path, which I think more and more people are looking for these days and age. I think, again, when we talk about the noise in the industry and the need to differentiate yourself in an ever-cluttered landscape of information, finding people with really special, unique voices is at the core of that, whether it's creatives within the agency, like copywriters and art directors coming up with really brilliant ideas, or if it's collaborators, photographers, animators, illustrators, directors, who can then take those ideas and add that next level. So if you're looking for something that's really going to, again, that surprise and delight we spoke about before, if you're looking for that moment of surprise and delight in this industry, in this really chaotic, noisy industry right now, reps are the only way that you're going to do that with any kind of regularity. You can get lucky from time to time on your own, or with an assistant producer helping you source. But a lot of the times, it's your reps who are going to help you figure that out. It's your reps who are going to help you source that. It's your reps who are going to point you in the right direction, who are going to give you reality checks when you need it. When you need to be brought down to earth a little bit, I hear what you're going for, but that's not, which is important. Reality
I think so too. I mean, I'm a rep, so I'm biased, but I've been doing it for a long time. And I see that we're not only are we a funnel and a curator, but we're also a translator. So my talent can say things to me that if they said to you, I'd cringe, right? But then I can translate it and say it to you and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You can do the same thing for your creatives, right? You can translate stuff that they need and figure out what it is they're looking for, give it to me, and I can help you with that. So I think you and I both have very similar roles in that way. And it's very symbiotic. We need to depend on each other. And, I've enjoyed it over the years. I've made good friends and strong relationships and have depended on those relationships for a really long time.
Hear, hear. I agree.
Okay. So we're kind of winding down, and I love that this podcast took a whole different direction, and there's lots of questions, but very specific questions we didn't get to today. But there's just one thing I kind of want to touch on before you leave is this idea of when you are bidding photographers or directors for a project and you're looking at multiple choices and you've gone through the creative calls and you've looked through the budgets and the estimates and you've reviewed treatments at that point, what sort of thing kind of rises to the top for you? What tends to be something that you, your team, JOAN Creative, tends to gravitate to? What qualities do these artists have that tend to succeed? If they want to succeed at JOAN, what kind of rises to the top in that process for you that you can share with the listeners?
At JOAN specifically, I would say that our creative leadership I jokingly say that they're allergic to making advertising. So if I bring something to the table that feels very expected, I'm not going to make any friends in that.
Mm-hmm. I think I've heard you say that before. I think that's fascinating. Yeah.
I think you and I have said that before. But I'm sincere in that. I think everybody from creative leadership down to the most junior copywriters, they're hungry. They're hungry for something that's a bit unexpected. If it's, there's a bit of a homogenous look to a lot of advertising these days. And I forget who put that story out there, but there was a story about the mood board effect and what it had on the effect it had on creative advertising, and that is that clients have required us to comp and mock so much stuff up and to pull mood boards in such a way that everything has just kind of wound up looking exactly the same. And I think what I really admire about the team at JOAN is that they have tried and strived really hard to avoid that. If we see something that looks like an idea that we've started concepting, we're like, okay, this has been done before. Why are we treading that exact same water? We need to reevaluate where we are and think about how to do this differently. And so when I'm putting people in front of my team, what I really love to see is, yes, there's a caliber and a talent, and they need to have a good eye and a good quality to their photography, and, lighting. If your lighting is shit, why are you even a photographer? Lighting, but the amount of poorly lit photographs is astounding. So lighting, but it's also a point of view. And I think very specifically, if the photographer or their work gets lost and is forgettable, that's the worst thing that can happen. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not necessarily the work that is making the team pause and take a second look. Sometimes it truly is that point of view, or the approach, or the way, or the finish, or the maybe it's the way the retouching will happen, or maybe it's a thoughtful approach to comping something together. It can take shape in a lot of different ways, but most importantly, it needs to be a point of view, a strong creative point of view that doesn't feel expected, that doesn't feel like everybody else's, that demonstrates why you are the right partner to collaborate on. Because ultimately, this idea can't exist without every member of the creative team, be it vendor or agency, coming to the table and showing up. So if one of those links is really weak, the creative is going to suffer, and nobody's going to want that.
Over the last few podcasts, certain words have been coming up. You used two of them today, surprise and delight. Allie Burke from 782 and Sunny talked about the idea of creating unforgettable work. And I think that is true for the entire industry. How can you take that mood board effect, look at the mood board, and then do something completely different, right? If you can pull enough imagery and content to create a mood board, that means it's been done. So how can you put your own point of view on it, your own, what life experiences, what things do you value that you can draw from that make it your own piece? And I think that's so important, whether you're a photographer, a director, an artist of any type, a creative in our industry. I think that's just putting your own mark on something. It's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This has been fascinating and really interesting. And I love that when we started this, before we started recording, I said, we just use the questions as a guide, but let's just kind of see where the conversation takes us. And I say that every time. And I think in the almost 100 episodes that we've done, I don't think, maybe there's a handful that have gone off in different directions that have been really, really fascinating. And this has been one of them. So thank you so, so much for your time, your insight, your confidence in talking about all of this stuff. I really appreciate it. But before we leave, I always ask everybody the same two questions. And I'm very curious what your favorite thing to do on is a Sunday. And maybe it's run with your dog and hoard some plants. But other than that, and then if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
Okay. So I recently lost both of my dogs, both my beloved dogs. Oh. So I only say that to say, like, that happened earlier in the year.
Okay.
And so,
oh goodness,
most of my Sundays are now dedicated to finding the next dog, and to my husband going, we can't have a dog yet. We just had a newborn. And I'm like, but this dog. And he's like, no. And I'm like, but, and he's like, no, really.
That's hysterical.
Most Sundays I'm out with my family. If the weather is permitting, I'm outside, I'm in the park, I'm enjoying what I can. I love, looking at the horizon, which is a funny way to phrase that, but there's something really refreshing about being in a space and looking far in front of you and just feeling small in the world. And so any opportunity I have to be outside and feel small in the world, I will take it. If the weather's crappy, I love to watch TV. So I love TV. If I didn't have kids and I had time to binge watch things, I would do it a lot more often. I love my mat leave. I watched on maternity. I watched so much television because it was just me and that little baby. And it was so wonderful for my heart to catch up on some really amazing, prestigious television that I'd missed out on over the last 3 years. So I'm kind of born in that way. If I can't be outside, I love to veg out on television. And if I wasn't in advertising is the $1 million question. I joke that I would start a donkey rescue out in the mountains because donkeys are unloved and somebody needs to be their advocate. And if anybody needs a smile, there's a donkey rescue in, I think it's Denver, called Long Hope's Donkey Rescue. And I recommend that you peep on their Instagram for a little smile.
Oh my gosh, that's great. I'm writing this down. Long Hope Donkey. Okay.
If I was a millionaire and money was no object, I would rescue things that needed to be rescued. I'm a big pit bull fan. And so I love an underdog in every step of my life. And the really boring answer is I'd probably be doing something in operations.
Yeah.
I think a lot of producers have that capacity.
Can't get away from it.
So I would like to think I'd be running a pit bull donkey rescue in advertising.
Yeah. Your husband would not like that.
I mean, he would because we'd be rich, so we'd have
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so he'd be fine with anything.
His thing is he doesn't know how to manage a dog with a brand new baby and a 3-year-old in a New York apartment, which is a fair criticism.
Which is a very fair criticism. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. This was amazing, Chris. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and know it's valuable.
Thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak with you.
Absolutely. Have a great afternoon.
You as well.